hello, my name is Milos. And the jerk store called, they're running out of you. So, unlike the last disc, which I said didn't really have many of, like, my favorite episodes. Some I feel like I should have given a little bit more credit to. Like the Chicken Rooster, The Absence was also definitely a good one also. The rest of them, you know, they were good. But like I said, they weren't, like, the most standout episodes of Seinfeld to me. Another one of my personal favorite, another underrated episode in my opinion, was definitely The Comeback. I loved the Comeback episode. Particularly because of the whole, you know, idea of George obsessing over, you know, seeing a rival and wanting to zing him so bad that he traveled just to zing this guy again. From the Yankees to Firestone. I don't get how you can leave the Yankees for Firestone. But that, and I love, for some reason, I loved Milos. The character, the tennis pro shop guy in this episode. I don't know why I love that name. I don't know what it is. Anytime, you know, my best friend, I like to prank call each other with somebody else. I always go, Adol, my name is Milos. I am here to tell you that I am not transforming over to the Byzantine Rite or something like that. I don't know what it is. I just love the name Milos. I don't know if it's because he was just really good. I mean, he really played his part well as being like a salesman who ended up being absolutely horrible at the actual sport. But there was a lot of funny things that happened in this episode, the Comeback. And I definitely say it's one of my personal favorites. So, let's talk about it. Of course, the main story is George was at a meeting with the Yankees. He was eating a lot of shrimp, which I feel for George because I love shrimp too. And then the guy sitting across him, his name was Riley, he goes, you know, George, the ocean called. They're running out of shrimp. And everybody just, like, cracked up, and George just felt, you know, defeated. Later on, of course, he's driving, he is, like, grumbling at the ocean called. They're running out of shrimp. Ah! Yes! That's what I should have said! Damn it! And realizing he missed out on an opportunity, he thought. Of course, he gets back to Jerry's apartment, and he tells Jerry that, you know, next time he sees Riley, he's going to tell him that the jerk store called, they're running out of you. And everybody's just like, it's not that great. And of course, you know, George is just thinking it's this gold. It's like, you know, it's this incredible thing that anybody could have come up with. Meanwhile, I agree again, it sucks. It really isn't that great of a comeback. But, you know, George thinks it's so great, and it's just so funny how he's just obsessing over an opportunity. So we'll wait for that. So, of course, then, meanwhile, Jerry, though, he started going to this new club, and he was playing tennis at this new club. So, him and George were there, and then Jerry just wants to get a new can of balls. And then, of course, this is where we meet Milos, and he goes, "Hello, my name is Milos, how may I help you today?" And then he wants to say, "I'll take a can of balls. Can of balls for the young lad." And then he's about to, give Jerry's final total, but he sees the racket Jerry's using. He's like, "You're not going to use them with that racket." And Milos, who claims that he always plays with this $200 brew liner. I don't know what kind it was. I just thought of brew lines. I just thought of the episode with Mr. Pitt and the Miss Landis with the humidor epicondylitis. But it was a fancier $200 racket compared to Jerry's like cheap looking one that he had. So he talked Jerry into buying it. Meanwhile, then Kramer and Elaine were on a spree of getting movies, and there's some employees there who had like their picks out that just write their suggestions. Kramer seemed to always like Gene's picks. Elaine was always a big fan of Vincent's picks, which were good movies, but Vincent's picks were like a lot more emotionally exhausting. Elaine, of course, was watching one of the movies that night, and she gets a call, and sure enough, it is Vincent from Vincent's Picks. And they talked for like 2 hours. And of course, Elaine, and of course, they cast him. So Vincent was actually casted by has two different people who plays him. One plays a voice, one plays the actual Vincent that we see at the end of the episode. And the voice was like mysterious, romantic sounding. It worked out really good. I think, let me see here, the name of the guy who did the voice, I know Danny Strong was the name of the guy who played the actual Vincent we see on TV. Let me see here. Robbie Benson played Vincent's voice, but he wasn't credited in the episode. So Elaine starts like a, like somewhat of like romantic feelings for this guy, even though she has no clue what he looks like, of course. So that happens. Then Kramer, meanwhile, one of the movies he watched was The Other Side of Darkness. He didn't finish it, but he sees in the movie that the woman goes into a coma. With that being said, he then basically starts writing out his will and advises that Jerry could be the executor of his will and that he can basically pull the plug on him if he ever went into a coma. Since, he doesn't want to, suffer like the woman in The Other Side of Darkness did. However, here's the catch. Kramer didn't finish the movie yet. So meanwhile, George, of course, was relishing. He found he had another meeting and Riley was going to be there. And he was relishing to use his jerk store comeback. And again, the first time, Jerry was the only one who heard it. The rest of them, though, like Kramer, Elaine, and just Kramer and Elaine, they thought it sucked. They were trying to give him some new ones. I can't remember what Elaine said. I know Jerry said you used the line, hey Riley, the zoo called, you're due back by 6. And then Kramer says, you want a good singer, just tell him he had sex with his wife. And George is like, enough. You're ruining a perfectly good line. I'm going with jerk store. Jerk store is the line. Jerk store. Anyways, but then meanwhile, George goes to the meeting, and he finds out that Riley is no longer with the Yankees. And he was like, you know what? No one told me that. And of course, which George is disappointed. He got there, he's like, what are we gonna? And they started meeting. He's like, wait, where's Riley? Ain't Riley here yet? Because he again was obsessing over the fact he wanted to zing Riley again in this meeting. But then of course they told him that Riley doesn't work here anymore. And then he told, we only inform you of the important meetings. And then, of course, everybody laughed at it again. So George, again, was once again humiliated. But instead, George then wants to track down where the heck he went to. So then, meanwhile, Jerry and Elaine were sitting by a tennis court at the club. I can't remember what they were talking about, but there was this guy in the background who was just, like, god-awful at tennis. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm terrible at tennis. I am absolutely terrible. I can at least make contact with the ball, but my thing is I either hit it too soft or too hard. I hit it too soft, it won't go over the net. I'll hit it too hard, it's like a baseball, like flying out of the park. That's how bad I am at tennis. This guy couldn't even freaking hit the ball. He was swinging and missing, falling all over the place. He was backing away from when the ball was hit at him. He was awful. When the ball kept dribbling back to Jerry and Elaine, he kept throwing it back to him, and they didn't even notice how terrible he was. Finally, when the last times the ball came back to Jerry threw it, the guy had some shades on. He lifted the shades for a second, and Jerry realized this horrible tennis player is no other than Milos. Milos, who sold Jerry a $200 tennis racket, and says that's the only racket he uses when he plays, and he loves tennis, which is true. He loves tennis, except he sucks. So Jerry was just pissed that basically this guy talked him to buying a $200 racket because it works good for him. He can't even make contact with the ball. He sucks. So Jerry's going to confront Milos later. Meanwhile, of course, when Jerry was venting to Kramer about this, he kept trying to pull his old tennis racket out of the garbage. And then, Kramer tells him, like, you just can't let go or whatnot of the old racket that stinks. It's horrible. Or was it... or was it? I can't remember what it was, but either way, it led to Kramer changing Jerry's mind about Kramer changed his mind about who must be executive of his will, and he goes with Elaine instead. So it's all going through set and smooth. But then, of course, Kramer has a dumb realization later, and he changed his mind, which is a little bit of a continuity error. Anyways, so then Elaine, was at the movie, was trying to rent another movie again with Kramer, and Kramer was trying to talk Elaine into checking out this Gene pick, Weekend at Bernie's or something like that. And, she decided to just go with it, give it a shot. And she mentions how Vincent's movies are good, but they're emotionally exhausting, where Bernie's has a little bit of a comedy kick to it. And Elaine watches it. Now, the reason why Vincent called Elaine is, one, Elaine was checking out a lot of his movies, but he got her number off of, the off the list whenever the movie was checked out. However, though, he finds out, I guess, that Elaine checked out a Gene pick, and he basically thought that Elaine betrayed him. So, because even in a later scene, Elaine went time Elaine went back to the movies after that. There was the only movie that was on the shelf was just this movie called Betrayed, and then Vincent stopped making picks, and the guy changed his shelf over to a Gene shelf. And then Elaine was like, "What movie do you want to watch now?" And the guy goes, "Well, we have a bunch of Gene picks." And then Elaine goes, "Gene's trash." And the guy just goes, "I'm Gene." And so of course, Elaine realized that, oh crap. And then of course, Elaine receives in the mail from Vincent the play button from his VCR. And she hadn't heard from Vincent again for quite a while after that. Meanwhile, though, Jerry goes back to the health club to confront Milos. And basically, Milos is apologizing to Jerry. He goes, "I know you know what it looks like." He goes, "But if anybody ever found out that he was," he mentioned how much he loves tennis, and he said if anybody ever found out that that he was a bad tennis player, it would ruin his business. And then Milos wanted to make it up to Jerry by giving him free membership at the club for 6 months or a year or something like that. And he goes, of course, to check with someone to make sure he could do that. But Jerry, meanwhile, spots this beautiful woman, in the shop, and Jerry makes some type of a comment to Milos. And then Milos kind of laughed it off, and then he mentions, "I'm sorry, there's no way I can do this. Is there anything else I could do?" And Jerry goes, "I just don't want any. I don't want anything. He goes, I just feel cheated out by the worst tennis player." And he goes, shushes him again. He goes, "I'll make it up to you." As Jerry's walking out, he walks past the lady he had his eye on before. He was like, "Tennis, anyone?" And she seemed to kind of chuckle over it. Milos, of course, sees that. So I think it was the next day. Jerry was walking home, and he runs into that same woman a block or so away from his apartment. And she introduces herself as Patty and says that Milos had given her his address. And then Jerry realizes, oh, Milos really trying to make it up to me now. So he asks her, Patty, she wants to go out for some coffee, and she says, "Why don't we just go straight up to your apartment?" And he goes, "Okay." She's skipping, the cup of coffee and going to the apartment. Maybe we'll have some coffee there. Maybe. Well, they get to the apartment, and I thought this was raining. I just saw a text about my softball game and whatnot, but scary for a second. But then they get to the apartment, and Jerry's trying to make conversation, asking her if she likes to play tennis. She basically grabs Jerry's drink and puts it down. She goes, "Enough stalling, Jerry." And she goes to start making a move. Obviously, she wants to hit the home run. She wants to, serve it up big time to Jerry right away. They're about to start kissing, but then all of a sudden, she starts flipping out. And she has a little bit of an accent also. And she's just freaking out. And she's like, I can't do this, not even for him. And she starts crying. And Jerry's like, "What are you talking about?" And then the lady Patty mentions that Milos is her husband. And of course, nothing happens at all. So the next scene before when George mentions that Riley's no longer with the club, he says something to Jerry. Jerry's telling him what happened, and George is like, so in order to have you cover up his poor tennis skills, he offers you his wife as some medieval sexual payola, or it was. And Jerry just mentions, he's new in town, because obviously he says he didn't do anything with her, of course. And then, of course, when George tells him that Riley is no longer with the club. Meanwhile, though, Kramer comes in. He finished watching The Other Side of Darkness. And, of course, he spoils it because George didn't see it yet. But he says, the coma woman wakes up in the end. And, of course, again, that was a spoiler to George. And George wanted to see it. And then Kramer mentions, I didn't know you could wake up from a coma. And then Jerry was like, I didn't know it was possible to not even know that. Because also a continuity error here. There's been twice, from what I can think of, where Kramer witnessed a coma victim. The first one was back in the suicide episode when their neighbor, Martin, was in a coma, and he woke up from his coma right in front of Kramer. And that's the one where Newman wanted to squeal to him that Jerry was having like a fling with his girlfriend, who was planning on breaking up with Martin anyways. And the other one was back in the Keys episode, where in the Keys, where Kramer was, hitching a ride on with this motorcycle out to California, and the guy told him that he wasn't wearing a helmet, and then he got knocked out from a bad motorcycle accident. So Kramer has witnessed a coma before. But anyways, though, so then we have, so because of this, though, Kramer has changed his mind, and he wants to, cancel everything that was on his will. Well, he went to go meet with his lawyer, Shellback, and Shellback, he was late for his appointment, and Shellback had already left for a day for a tennis lesson. Meanwhile, George finds out where Riley's working at now, for Firestone in Akron, Ohio. Again, how do you go from Firestone to, from the Yankees to Firestone? Unless I missed it here, unless that's like a corporate headquarters for Firestone or something. But yeah, he was working for Firestone in Akron, Ohio. And he says, I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning. Yes, George was flying all the way out to New York, just to Akron, Ohio, just to zing a guy. And of course, George saying, don't get me wrong, don't you understand? Having a line as good as Jerk Store, can't pass up on. And Elaine mentions out there are no Jerk Stores. It's just very confusing and whatnot. George, though, does not listen, of course, and he goes to Akron. We'll get to that in the end. Elaine, meanwhile, finally did hear from Vincent again, and she basically begs to let her meet him. But he asked her if she could bring some things to the store. She bought for him vodka, cigarettes, and fireworks. Which, the cigarettes is a little confusing, because hasn't Elaine turned down how many people because of smoking? But she shows up at the door of his apartment. Vincent cracks it open. We hear, Elaine? And then he's telling him to just leave it and go. And then Elaine's like sticking her head through the door, all dramatic, like, I don't shut me out. I know you're hurting, but I know how you feel. We feel what I feel. Like, it was all dramatic, like, so, emotional in the moment. All of a sudden, some woman says, excuse me? And Vincent goes, ah, damn it. Completely killing the mood. To find out, and the door opens all the way, and we see Vincent go, no, my acne, and runs away. To find out that the woman, of course, is Vincent's mother, and that Vincent is just a 15-year-old child. And, of course, she basically says, finds out that she's the one that Vincent sent the play button to her VCR to, and she basically handed Elaine back the bag of, stuff she got at the store for Vincent. So I'm sure Vincent's in trouble, but Elaine was completely turned off, but yet she still left the cigarettes and fireworks there. She just took the bottle of vodka and went, because that's kind of a moment of like a I need a drink moment. As for Jerry, he went back to the pro shop and basically told, Milos that, he's upset with him. He goes, but he never had any intention of trying to ruin his business. Milos is appreciative that Jerry does that Jerry, was what to do that. He goes, but we got another problem. After what he did, trying to basically tell his wife to have sex with Jerry, his wife no longer respects him. And, she loves tennis just as much as he does. So he asked Jerry, can I beat you in a game of tennis one time in front of her? It's the only way I could show her that I'm a man. And then Jerry goes, I'll do it. He goes, but as long as there's no, girls around. He goes, he wants to be a man too. So, of course, they go to play, and Jerry took it easy on him and whatnot. And then he's telling how Milos, how he's too good and whatnot. But Milos, though, is getting a little too cocky. Go like, another game for Milos! And then, he starts like rubbing in his face to his wife, saying how, Jerry's not really a man or whatnot, and calling him a chicken and calling him a baby and whatnot. He's getting too carried away. So then Jerry tells Milos, like, can you lighten up a little bit? There's girls around, and he goes, look at the chicken! And Milos just wasn't letting up, and it was just, again, Jerry was like, okay, I told you I'd let you beat you, but you're embarrassing me too much, too, at the same time. So then, of course, Milos wouldn't cut it out, so Jerry got mad, and he started, not taking it easy. And he hits one to Milos, and Milos, just got out of the way. He's like, whoa, what are you doing there? He goes, oh, the baby got lucky on that one. And then Jerry, of course, was just stop playing easy. He was done playing games with Milos. So then he goes to do another one, and Jerry serves up another one. Milos goes to hit it. Of course, he swings and misses completely. And with how clumsy he was, the tennis racket went flying out of his hand. Now, at the same time, Kramer was showing up because he had to track down Shellback because he wanted to, basically, retract everything he had in his will. So, when Milos, when the racket went flying, Kramer starts watching the racket, and sure enough, it lands into the guy who was operating the machine that was shooting out the tennis balls for Shellback for his lesson. And the guy, I don't know why he tried to catch the racket. He had plenty of time to get out of the way, but catches it and falls over and, basically turns the machine towards Kramer. And the balls were just launched at Kramer and just nailed Kramer right at the head one by one, knocking out Kramer. Ouch. So, that was a string of bad luck there. I don't know what happened to Milos, but Jerry, Finally snapped, had enough of Milos, just, treating him like absolute crap because he was doing him a big favor. But, of course, Jerry went to the hospital to check on Kramer. Elaine was nice and brought him a gene pick to watch for a movie. And then that's when she told Jerry that she's kind of off Vincent now. But, of course, she needed an outlet to plug in the VCR. So she pulled one of the plugs right by Kramer. And I'm not sure if it was to one of Kramer's machines or something that he was hooked up to, but it woke up Kramer. Kramer was probably just reacting from thinking he was still getting attacked by the balls. He just goes, "Wah!" and just freaks out as the episode ends, of course. Now, meanwhile, in the closing credits, George flies to Akron to go to Firestone, which they used the same exact meeting room as they did for George's Yankees meetings, except have a Firestone logo up there instead, which again was a little odd. And again, I still don't get it. Unless it's some type of a big corporate position, how do you go from the Yankees to Firestone? So I don't get it. So George's excuse for showing up there was that he was pitching for a snow-tired day at Yankee Stadium, which even one of the guys at the meeting said it doesn't make sense. George didn't care. He was just eating another big bucket of shrimp just to try to trigger Riley to say the line again. So Riley does say it again, "Hey, George, the ocean called. They're running out of shrimp." And then everybody chuckles. And then George goes, "Oh, yeah, Riley?" He stands up nice and proud, pumps in his chest and goes, "Well, the jerk store called. They're running out of you." Got no reaction whatsoever. Riley then says, so who cares? I hear you're their best seller. And everybody starts laughing, and George again was just dead in the water. So out of desperation, he just fires out, "Oh yeah? Well, I had sex with your wife." And then George, thinking he had nailed him, but everybody was silent. He thought that he had stunned everyone. And then the Firestone, one of the guys from Firestone just gets up to George, leans in his ear and goes, his wife is in a coma. And then George flies all the way back to New York. Again, just feeling defeated. My wife's in a coma. Yeah, well, the life support machine called and... Yes! That's what I should have said! He looks at his shoulder. He literally turns around and screams out, "Your meat, Riley! Your meat!" He was literally about to get back on a plane and fly back out to Akron just to once again zing Riley once again. Did it work? Who the hell knows? But that was the comeback episode. We have Jerk Store, we got Milos, we got Elaine having a over-the-phone relationship with a guy she's never even met, turned out to be a 15-year-old boy, and Kramer does not know you can wake up from a coma. Very strange, but I love this episode. I really, really love this episode. Very good episode for sure. Humorous. I love the stories. It was a fun episode. Milos, though. Oh, man. A couple trivia facts, of course. As I said before, there was a continuity with, Kramer not knowing about it, a coma victim can wake up, but yet he's seen it happen or heard about it in the Keys and in the suicide episode. Elaine also brings cigarettes for a guy she wants to meet and date, yet she was turned off by smokers in the past. The line, "another game for Milos," became popular in Canada as an unofficial catchphrase for pro tennis star Milos Raonic. Now the big thing was that surprisingly in the Inside Look it was mentioned that there was not any indoor tennis courts available in LA except for one at UCLA, but it was not available for when it needed it. So originally the scenes on the tennis courts were an outdoor tennis court with a tent over it that they had to be held up by a crane and some grips and whatnot. However, though, during the shooting those scenes, though, it started to rain. It was a torrential rainstorm, like one of the biggest storms that LA had at the time. And basically the safety guys were like, hey, 10 more minutes, we gotta wrap it up. And good thing they wrapped it up as soon as they did. Because I guess apparently the tent collapsed and they got hit with probably I think it was 500,000 pounds of rainwater. And of course also there was electrocution. So there could have been a lot of fires and whatnot. So of course because of that safety issue, to finish those scenes the ones towards the end where Kramer gets pummeled by the balls, what they did was they went back to the CBS studios and built a half-court set to finish those sequences, which, of course, it was tough to do that for sure. But it's just the safer way they had to do it. So, yeah, that's surprising. How big LA is, there was only really one indoor tennis court they were able to find, but it was already booked at UCLA. Yeah, but that's the comeback. I talked a lot about this episode. Like I said, I personally loved it. It was one of my favorites for sure. I believe next up is the money. I think it is, which wasn't too bad of an episode either. Didn't like it as much as the comeback, but it was definitely a good one. We do have another really good episode with another big interesting shot that actually took a long time to set up, but that's a little bit later on down the line on this disc. But I'll see you guys next time in the money. So once again, guys, what were your thoughts on the comeback episode? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. And until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out, everybody.